Welcome to Reddit Audio Tales, where OP shuts down an entire company. Today in school, we were in algebra and we were taking a test. The teacher was out of the classroom for a bit and someone asked me for the answers. Now, I secretly hated this kid for almost a year because he had destroyed my $210 phone. And he only paid me back $20 and said, hopefully this will be enough for a screen protector. So anyways, it turns out he had skipped one question. So as a result, all of his answers were off on the scantron by one number, so he accidentally had about 75% of the questions answered in the wrong box, making them all wrong. He asked me to erase them for him so he could copy my answers because his arm hurts. I was just about done with mine, so I finished it and erased his. But instead of giving him my answers, I just turned my paper in. He now had 5 to 10 minutes to answer about 30 questions. The teacher then walked back in while he was pleading with me, and the teacher asked what was going on. I told him that David was trying to copy my answers. No regrets. Our next Reddit post is from Sober on Life. A few months ago, a new business investor at work came on board as a manager and he's been an absolute hard ass. He's cracking down on anything he considers to be a waste of time and he's unforgiving. After a week of watching us work, he and the other managers held a company-wide meeting to iron out some wrinkles in the company that he observed since he started. It wasn't even an open dialogue, though. In fact, that's one of the things that he wanted to wrinkle out. It was essentially just 20 minutes of, it's our way or the highway. Deal with it. The line, if we want your input, we'll ask for it. Period. Really stuck with me, though. And it was made abundantly clear afterwards that this was directed at me. This company has had a big problem recently with employee turnover and I was in the position to know why since I interact with everyone through my role. Essentially, people are quitting because the work they're doing wasn't what they signed up to do. The phrase, if I knew this is what I'd be doing, I wouldn't have accepted the job, was a common sentiment. People accepted the job under the impression that they'd be serving customers, answering emails and phone calls, general customer service stuff. But instead, they spend about 90% of their time in a hot warehouse packing online orders. Over and over again. I shared this information with management. I let them know what the people leaving were saying in case they wanted to take that into account moving forward. They just thanked me and I left. But the new manager hated that so much that he decided to make a meeting about giving them unsolicited advice. They spoke with me privately afterwards and referred back to when I told them what the quitting employee said. And they told me that the way they interpreted that was that I was implying that they were being deceitful when hiring people. I told them, no, I don't think that at all. I was just relaying what those people were saying about how they felt. They didn't care. They doubled down and said again, if we want your input, we'll ask for it. Period. That's how I knew that it was directed at me. I asked them for clarification like what constitutes advice or input and the new boss said, unless you're asking us a question about the work you're supposed to be doing, we don't want to hear it. We don't want your opinion on how you think that we should handle situations. We don't want your ideas on how you think the business can be better run. And we don't want gossip about what other people are saying about us. Just focus on your job. Fine then, I'll roll with that. No problem. Since then, the hiring problem hasn't been fixed. We've had 2 more people come and go, both of them because they didn't sign up for this. Shocker? A third new employee started about 5 weeks ago. And he's taken his frustration in a different direction. I've overheard him complain over and over again to other people about how he didn't sign up to stand around in a hot warehouse for hours packing online orders. But instead of quitting like everyone else, he just got angrier and angrier. And then he hulkied out. I was upstairs at my desk when I started to hear smashing. I went down to the warehouse to see what was going on and the guy was taking customers' packages and smashing them out of frustration. A few others in the warehouse gathered and just watched in amusement. It was like something out of a cartoon. The new boss heard the commotion and came down. Long story short, the guy was fired and I was asked if I knew why he flipped out. I said, I don't know what happened exactly to cause him to flip out, but I do know that. For weeks he's been complaining about not signing up to work in a hot warehouse for hours. Maybe he just reached a tipping point about it. I'm not sure. And then he said, well, why didn't you tell us? Because the last time I told you that the employees were complaining about that, you accused me of implying that you were being deceitful when hiring them. Then you told me to stop gossiping. The new boss had to eat crow a bit on that, which was just so effing delicious to witness. But I was also reprimanded for taking the request too literally, and he accused me of being petty. Whatever though, I don't care, because I had to adjust the stock levels for the goods. That had to be replaced, and they lost about $10,000 worth of merchandise in the rampage. Some of the items that he smashed were worth $2,000 each. Learning that made the whole thing worthwhile. Perhaps enjoying that does make me petty. Our next Reddit post is from Atomic File. A couple of months ago, I had a run-in with a self-appointed HOA enforcer of my neighborhood. Let's call her Linda. For context, I don't live in an HOA community, but Linda likes to pretend that we do. She's the kind of person who leaves passive-aggressive notes on cars, knocks on doors, to complain about the height of grass on lawns, and calls the city for violations that don't actually exist. This issue started because I parked my car on the street in front of my house. It's perfectly legal, and I've been doing it for years without any complaints. But apparently, Linda decided that my car was an eyesore. One day, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper that said, "This is not a parking lot. Parking your driveway like a respectful neighbor. Don't make me involve the city." It annoyed me, but I shrugged it off and kept parking where I always do. This was not good enough for Linda. The next time, she confronted me in person. "I've told you before, parking on the street is inconsiderate. You have a driveway. Use it." I said, "It's legal to park here and I'm not blocking anything." "It doesn't matter. It's ugly and makes the neighborhood look bad. Parking your driveway or I'll report you." That's when I decided, fine. If she wants me to park in my driveway, I'll park in my driveway. But I'll follow every single rule to the letter. You see, my driveway is small. If I park my car in it, it blocks the sidewalk. Technically, it's against city ordinances to obstruct the sidewalk. So the next day, I pulled my car right into the driveway, perfectly centered, and guess what? It completely blocked the sidewalk. It didn't take long for Linda to notice. She marched up to my door, red-faced, and furious. "You can't block the sidewalk. That's illegal." "Oh, I thought she wanted me to park in my driveway." "Not like that. Park properly. There's no other way to park in my driveway without blocking the sidewalk. Guess I'll have to park back on the street then." Her face was priceless. She sputtered for a moment before stomping off. Thinking that was the end of it, I parked back on the street. But no, Linda wasn't done yet. She actually called the city on me. A week later, a city inspector came by. He checked out the situation, saw that my car was legally parked on the street, and told me that I was doing nothing wrong. However, he did mention that Linda had made several complaints about code violations in the neighborhood, and they were getting tired of her nonsense. After that, I didn't hear from Linda for a while. Until last week, when she started parking her car on the street in front of my house. So I did what any good neighbor would do. I called the city and reported it. Turns out, her car was slightly too close to a fire hydrant. She got a ticket. Malicious compliance never felt so sweet. Our next Reddit post is from Age. My great-uncle passed away at the age of 97, and I heard this great story of malicious compliance at his memorial service today. He worked for over 50 years at the same confectionery factory, and most of that time he was a boiler room attendant. This was just after World War II, and at the time, most of the machines and processes were powered by steam, even the heating. The steam was generated by massive boilers, and it was his job to monitor the boilers to make sure that nothing went wrong. These boilers could potentially explode, causing great damage. By law, the boiler had to be attended at all times, and there were shifts that watched them around the clock, even when the factory was closed. They took so long to heat up that it was easier and cheaper to leave them running at night. After about 10 years of no incidents, the company hired a leading hand who would also act as the safety officer. He had been a sergeant in the army, and he took his job quite seriously, being quite the disciplinarian. He instituted a multitude of new procedures. Some warranted, some just to establish control. The first time he wanted to conduct a fire drill, he went around telling the staff that when they heard the alarm, they had to exit the building in an orderly fashion. He got to the boiler room, and it was my great-uncle on duty that day. My uncle informed the safety officer that he wouldn't be able to evacuate with everyone else, and he had to stay with the boiler. The safety officer didn't give my uncle time to explain why. He just bluntly informed my uncle that he was to treat the fire drill as if it were a real fire. No exceptions. So, when the fire bell finally rang, my uncle did exactly what he was told to do. He turned off the gas to the boilers, vented all the built-up steam, purged the water, and joined everyone outside. At the evacuation point, they were doing a head count when the production manager spotted my uncle and immediately approached him and asked him what he was doing away from the boiler. My uncle said that he was participating in the fire drill, as instructed, but don't worry, because he had shut the boiler down completely. The color immediately drained from the manager's face. The manager asked my uncle how long it would take to bring the boiler back online. Apparently, it would take hours just to fill the boilers with water and heat them up. The big issue was that because they had done an emergency purge, they were required to inspect every pipe, joint, and connection for damage before to make sure that it was safe to start to reheat. The other boiler men were called in, and they got paid double time to work through the night to get the boiler ready for the next day. Production staff all got sent home, but still got paid for the day, as it wasn't their fault the factory couldn't run. This caused them days of production as well. The safety officer did keep his job, but for the next 40 years, the boiler staff were all exempt from fire drills. Our next Reddit post is from Star Devil. I work overnight at a well-known gym franchise. My typical shift is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Usually, there's always supposed to be 2 people on night shift together, but lately, my coworkers have been calling off a lot, causing me to be in the gym alone all night. My coworker, Sam, comes in at 6 a.m. when I get off. Here's the problem: Sam usually doesn't come in on time. She's usually always 10 to 15 minutes late. So Sam comes in late, and I tend to have to stay clocked in past 6 a.m. Additionally, since I'm usually alone at night, I can't get any important tasks done until Sam comes in. My boss noticed my time cards, and got very upset that I haven't been clocking out right at 6 a.m. He made me feel really crummy, despite me constantly being on the blunt end of all of his scheduling messes. So I told him, okay, I'll leave exactly at 6 a.m., so that's what I've been doing. I've been leaving the gym entirely unattended until someone gets there, and most of the time, someone doesn't get there for a while. So now, members are confused. My manager doesn't know what to do, considering he's the one who scolded me for staying past 6 a.m. He thought that I would clock out and just stay off the clock, but why would I do that? I'm not going to take the fall for someone else being late. He won't fire me or write me up because this is technically what he wanted. Our next Reddit post is from Prismatic Leviathan, so this happened several years ago while I was working at Taco Bell, and it involves a pretty gross customer request. For those who don't know, Taco Bell asks for your name when taking an order so they can yell it when your food is ready. One particular customer, a dude in his 40s wearing camo, decided to abuse the rule. When asked, he told the cashier that his name was Daddy. This isn't good in any situation, but the cashier at the time was a very young girl. I don't even think that she was 18, and she definitely wasn't his actual daughter. Naturally, she goes to find the shift lead, Kevin. Now Kevin is a lot of things, and one of those things is gay. I'm trying to find the right words to say this without offending anybody, so I'll just say that he isn't really macho. We live in the Midwest, and I can guarantee that he's been called more than one slur. Even before actually showing romantic affection towards another guy. I wasn't there for this part, but I've been told that Kevin's reaction to what the creep was trying to pull was like handing a needle to a kid in a balloon store. When the food was ready, Kevin goes up to the counter and just belts out, "Daddy," in exactly the tone you're imagining. Some people go silent, others start whispering, and the entire back is just trying not to laugh. Daddy doesn't say a word. He just marches up, gets his food, and leaves. Down in the comments, we have this story from Turbulent Concept. This reminds me of a barista that made a creepy grown man almost cry. He just loved to hear his name called out by women, so she calls his name normally, and he jokingly said, "That isn't how women usually call my name, wink wink." She said, "Oh, sorry, I'll try to sound more disappointed next time." Our next Reddit post is from Lunatic. This happened when I was living in a dorm. I explained to my roommates that because of my insomnia, I can't sleep whenever I want. I had to follow a strict routine, and I sleep from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I asked them to not make so much noise when I was trying to sleep. My roommates did not like this, so they complained to the person in charge, who told me that the sleeping hours are from midnight to 6 a.m. And if I dislike that, I can leave, but I don't have the right to ask anyone to be quiet before midnight or after 6 a.m. Alright then, my roommates tend to sleep from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m., and then also from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Now according to the rules, I have every right to be loud from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., right? And that's exactly what I did. Every day when they wanted to sleep, I played music or talked to my phone or invited people over. They couldn't sleep anymore. So eventually, they decided that they really need some sleep, and since I won't let them sleep during the day, they chose to sleep at 11 p.m. when I would also be asleep. But I wasn't done. You see, they already ruined my routine, so I can't sleep anymore, and keep in mind, I have the right to be noisy from 11 p.m. to midnight, and that's exactly what I did. Eventually, we had another fight, and they asked me to stop and promise to be quiet when I went to sleep. No one bothered my sleep after that. Dear listeners, if you have any questions related this video, please comment me, and if you love this story, make sure subscribe our YouTube channel. I will meet you in next one.